Part of the pleasure of my work for the Poetry Room is not so much to create new programs, but to attend to the particular convergences that already exist. Emerson once spoke of honoring those we live among as the ambassadors of existence. At Harvard right now, that's not too hard to do. It so happens that this era in Cambridge is distinguished by the presence of a multitude of active and engaged Spanish translators. Among them, Roberto Bolaño's translator, Laura Healy, John Ashbery's translator into Spanish, Daniel Aguirre Oteiza, got it right, Raúl Zurita's translator, Anna Deeny, and a mere hour away from here, if he drives fast, the translator of Pura Lopez Colomé and Corral Bracho, Forrest Gander. This evening, it gives me pleasure to announce the inauguration of a new partnership with the David Rockefeller Center for Latin American Studies, which will bring together emerging poets from Peru, Chile, and Argentina with translators from Harvard and neighboring institutions for a series of collaborative translations, as well as readings, installations, publications, undergraduate courses, and translation workshops for the entire community. This initiative will be overseen by my extraordinary colleague, Chloe Garcia Roberts, and will begin in 2013. But now for the moment at hand. Anna Deeny began translating Raúl Zurita while writing her doctorate on the subject of poetry and consciousness at Berkeley. What began as the need to include a smattering of English versions in her thesis turned into an enduring and steadfast commitment to his work. She handed in her thesis and a translation of Raúl Zurita's Purgatory almost simultaneously. Purgatory, a word that is often associated with getting one's doctorate. Deeny is currently working on Sky Below, a volume of selected works by Zurita, forthcoming in 2014. And perhaps most importantly for us tonight, Deeny is here to introduce and to read with our two esteemed guests this evening, Forrest Gander and Raúl Zurita. Please welcome Anna Deeny.
Good evening. I would first like to thank Christina Davis and Chloe Garcia Roberts for bringing Raúl Zurita and Forrest Gander together with us in Cambridge this evening. And thank you for coming. Want to move in a way that's more connected. See the cause and effect of my life. Here, in a poem from Core Samples from the World, published in 2011. Forrest Gander lets go the I, the first person singular, to exist fully in the want and the move. To move in a way that's more connected is a shift in emphasis from the subject to the predicate, a sacred act of letting one's point of reference go to at least, if nothing else, move in the direction of something else. In A Faithful Existence, published in 2005, Gander writes, "The meaningful dialogue between the poem and the reader is as much a sacred manifestation as I hope to encounter. Poetic form becomes the wanting and the moving, the pattern through which connections are made. Where do you think you come by your pattern?" the poem continues. Let's get this process right. Gander's work in language is literally work in movement as he traverses the globe, as much in his extraordinary poetry as in his exquisite translations. His most recent book, Echo and Coma, from which he'll read tonight, draws from the choreographies of Japanese Buto dancers. Here, Gander emphasizes the subtleties of movement and touch to think of poetry itself, of sound and syllables, as literally the choreographed touching of another human being. Forrest Gander was a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award in 2011, and this year, Core Samples made him a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize. Spectacle and Pigsty, poems by Kiwao Nomura, translated from the Japanese in collaboration with Kyoko Yoshida, won the Best Translated Book Award also this year. Raúl Zurita. Raúl Zurita's first book of poetry, Purgatory, published in 1979, inaugurates the search for a language capable of comprehending and overcoming the traumatic life conditions under the Chilean military dictatorship. This groundbreaking volume of poetry was conceived as the first text of a Dantean trilogy that includes Anti-Paradise and The New Life. Written and published at the height of the Chilean dictatorship, Anti-Paradise is a lamentation of los chilenos destinos, Chilean destinies, embodied in the cordilleras and beaches. But it is also a reflection of individual will, communal responsibility, and hope. In 1982, Zurita had the first poem of Anti-Paradise written over Queens, New York, an homage to the minorities throughout the world, and in particular to Latino populations in the US. The white smoke of 6 planes spelled out verses that include, "My God is cancer. My God is emptiness. My God is wound. My God is ghetto." Published after re-democratization, La Vida Nueva, The New Life, is a relentless gallop of poetic voices, a meditation on shame and a requiem, a cathedral of testimonies, literature, and history that merge in a landscape of rivers, cordilleras, oceans, and sky. The last verse of this text, "Ni pena ni miedo," no shame, no fear, monumentally inscribed by Zurita in the desert of Atacama in 1993, concludes this epic tour de force. During the past 30 years, Zurita has published numerous volumes of poetry in prose. His recitals throughout the world and his experimentation with poetic forms, sites of language, and materials have drawn thousands together to experience a poetry that can be held as much within the hand and mind as in the earth and atmosphere. And yet, despite this remarkable breadth of poetic endeavors, Zurita insists, like Forrest Gander, that every individual gesture toward the other, wanting to move in a way that's more connected, is a work of art. As Zurita himself has said, "In a more benign world, art would no longer be necessary, because each particle of life, every human emotion, would be in itself a poem, the vastest of symphonies, a mural of skies, the cordilleras, the Pacific, the seashores, and the deserts." It is my wonderful pleasure to present Forrest Gander and Raúl Zurita.
Thank you so much, Anna. It's a really lovely introduction. Es un honor profundo estar aquí con el poeta grande Raúl Zurita. I'm really touched to have the opportunity to read with Raúl here. He's a great poet. He's going to change your life. Thank you, Christina, for having us here together. This is a poem written in praise of a rock. It's a stone mortar used by pre-Columbian Native Americans to grind grain on a base stone called a mano. Useful to know for this poem that the Zuni kept garden turkeys as natural pesticides. Mano. In microscopic pocks of a palm-sized granite stone, traces of green corn, purslane, snake fat, and pinyon fuse with smeared roots and beeweed pollen, ochre dust, which drifts summer-long into the scalp of a woman kneeling, intent, and bent over a light-bitten stone basin, her muscles flexed, trapezius to triceps, the wrist thick, working a short orbital swipe, handstone taking the curve of palm cupped, and her torso's weight falling through, while swallows dive and veer along the sheer cliff. The warm, scabbed heel of her palm bears down, heel of palm, into the skirling sound, stone merged with the hand that grinds it wheel-wise, the maker breath-blown, alive in her tool, lithe, flies fussing and landing, her hair fallen across her eyes, radiant upbeat, leaf-trilled. And into this cadence is inset the slower cadence to which she rocks her baby when he cries, and all the variable tempos of her breath, her body's measure, countless breaths, decibels of fullness and day's utterance, stress, all this pressed against basalt, vesicles into the stone, into the pocked stone, goes a rabbit hair, brushed from the hand that flensed the hide in late eye-long afternoon, when red ants pour from holes in rocky soil, ticking across fluff grass, square-headed ants, toward a garden where 3 guardian turkeys are staked to peck the leaf-eating ants. A minor victory, the garden greens up, registering in the eyes of the woman who scuffs stone on stone in the flood-buckling blare of violence and time that pockets her light in our light. As the pupil narrows in its lens and we bend, kneel almost, in a clearing to pick up and weigh the rock, hawk glide, our hand where millenniums gone, her hand had been, who winks out when we come clear, to whom? On a weedy hillside, where someone kneels in the now, even now, beyond our still flow, looking. Repeating dream. Early blue evening, bats wicker through thin isosceles street lamp light. In one impulse, both solutions and signs. She looks up. A block away, the ice cream van curbs ding-a-ling. A world familiar by consensus shifts on a hairline crack. The dead man parks in the driveway. She looks from the threshold, while behind her a television animates a wall, the opacity in which she lives. She considers how he has driven himself home from the cemetery, hunched over, his face immobile against the wheel. How limited the possibilities of our reaction to the inert past, the hardened mud, the day's demonstration of pure phenomena. Frozen at the screen door, she stares at the figure who sits grotesquely still in the parked car. And nothing more remembered of this dream, as if to say, here is the world. You do not even know how violently you are involved. The second ballad, after Juan de Yepes, 16th century. In that immense love coming from being, words were conceived of such feathery tenderness that no one understood. What was heard was this: nothing satisfies me, love, beyond your company, and if anything pleases me, I love that thing in you. Whoever most resembles you satisfies me most, and whoever does not finds nothing in me. You alone have pleased me, life of my life, light of my light, first figure of my understanding. To whomever loves this word, I give my molted being. And love I place in you, I also place in those who come to love as I, who love so much most love. This is a poem from a book called Eye Against Eye. There's a series of ligatures in them which have to do with domestic life and fathering. Ligature 1. When the strong drag of the boy's adolescence pulls through them, the family rises into thinness and begins to break like a wave. You turned around when I kissed you, the woman says. Why? Half-lidded days of early winter. When he points toward the woman, the boy looks at his hand the way dogs will. The boy's jaw sets, as though behind his teeth, into the soft flesh of his throat, a new set of teeth were cutting through. A mouth for what? Each of them adopts a private view. Arguments veer every which way, and who can follow? A sequence of dark non sequiturs blows in. When the word suicide enters the room where they are shouting, the system closes down, prematurely becalmed. The man writes, I am not given a subject, but am given to my subject. I am inside it like a parasite. He sees the woman's face contract at the approach of other futures than the one for which her face was prepared. I just want you to go away, one of them screams. Expressionless and flat as a tortilla, the afternoon moon over their house. She calls the man to a corner in the basement. Those aren't spider eggs, he says, backing up. Those are its eyes. When the encounter with the self is volcanic, nothing can follow. Tearing open the cocoon to reveal itself, a boy within the family, as if they were waiting, as if inside experience, bright with meaning, there were another experience, pendant, unnameable. Anna mentioned that writing poems, there's a little book that New Directions will publish next year called Ioko and Koma, which is a collaboration with the post-Buto dancers Ioko and Koma, hence the name. And they've been performing together for over 40 years. From Ioko and Koma, Projecting Love. Dragging her fingernails across the air as, stage left, he steps from darkness into his flesh, under the minatory glare, the flexed tendons of his fingers, her eyes and lips flare. When he stumbles, she is aware without looking. Almost they embrace. Vessels and nerves of his cheek under a thin strata of fascia. When her mouth breaks black open, when stage right he exits, cupping the wound. When she cries out in Japanese, I see the world upside down. Raven. Until they sound each other, they scrape around in confines of blindness, skin on skin as mind, looking overhead, at her own hand, exposed ardency, foot fully pointed. The carotid takes its slightly curved course north of his breastbone. Then it finishes, his white flower breath. As though the head loosens from its stem, falling back unsupported. He accepts the straw as her gift, sacrum to sacrum, his fingers at her face, her hair swallows his wrist, of some mutilated offering. These are the black feathers, the canoe bone in her shin, and ashes from his body rising. And this is the last of those Ioko and Koma poems. buried. Unpacks the recognizable, its chaos here, and the composition stutters, face stalking itself from inside, beyond all levels of, compressed into looking, unplotted, brutal, adust, his back muscles, her rib cage splays, they are naked, filled with the enormity of naked stillness, head held up, her hair pierced quills fixed to her back, and her right thigh rising to her face, air muffled through which his looking flies from somnolent eyes beyond walls that mark another beyond, of rooms echoey with shoe scuffs, naked squeaks, fully stretched he looks up, arches his neck, his hair pouring to the floor as his face lifts, chin tilting backwards toward the audience, seated back from the stage on benches in a beyond of dim out, from which they face the mound of ordure with naked bodies on either side, blue-black hair soft as a negative of two match flames. Look at the splice of likeness, then look again, it is severed. They turn their backs as water drips, popping here and here across the dirt, and beyond in dim penetralia, naked sound of water drops in the quiet, her face fissures, her mouth a rictus, her face in its final expression, an unsustainable look into another dimension of what? His naked hand, a piece of music rising into the black as we in curved light beyond ourselves reach for his fingers, reaching for her hair, two larval bodies, naked with faces and seared straw in their hair, hold our looking to the dark back of and beyond. I'll read one poem from a new book of translation that has a gorgeous cover that you can't see by Gerardo Suter, a Mexican photographer. And the book is Watchword by Pura Lopez Colomé. She's a Mexican poet. The Mexican title for the book is Santo y Seña. Oops. Y el anturio impávido. Dos abejorros les traen el jugo dulce y amargo al centro de las hojas color de rosa de una flor que no es rosa. Ahitos golpean los ventanales vez tras vez, seguros de emigrar, con el tesoro adentro, allende el aire, ignorantes del eclipse de un sendero libre, ignorantes del imán, de un espejismo, con la sangre miel en las entrañas, parte ya de una médula extática y distinta. And the intrepid anthurium. Two bumblebees extract nectar, sweet and bitter, from the center of a rose of rose-colored petals of a flower which is not a rose. Sated, they thud against the picture window again and again, fixed on escaping, with their bounty inside them, into the air behind them, incognizant that the path to freedom has been eclipsed, incognizant that they are drawn to an illusion, with the blood honey in their guts, already a part of their rapturous marrow, and distinct. So how about that incognizant with that Z in there buzzing? That's pretty good. Yeah. I was proud of that. Fun to read with translators in the audience. This is a book called Firefly Under the Tongue by another Mexican poet, a fabulous Mexican poet named Cural. And in her work, what I really love about it is the way that the subjectivity of the writer, the subjectivity of the human merges with the world in a kind of mutuality of expressiveness that is at once phenomenological and erotic and topographical, and absolutely musical. Firefly under the tongue, una luciérnaga bajo la lengua. I love you from the sharp tang of fermentation, en la polpa festiva, insectos frescos, azules, in the blissful pulp, newborn insects, blue, in the unsullied juice, glazed and ductile, a cry that distills the light through the fissures in fruit trees, under mossy water clinging to the shadows, the papiae, the grottos, in herbaceous dyes instilled from flustered touch, luster oozing bittersweet, voracious pleasure splayed in pulses, hinge, gozne, wrapped in the night's aura, in violacious clamor, refined the child, with softened root of his tongue, expectant, touches from that smooth, unsustainable lubricity, a sensitive lily folding into the rocks. If it senses the stigma, the ardor of light, the substance, the heiress, si presiente el estigma, el ardor de la luz, la sustancia, la arista, fine and vibrant, in the ecstatic petal distended, jewel, pulsing half open, udder, the acid juice bland, ice, the salt marsh, the delicate sap, Kabbalah, the nectar of the firefly. And I'm going to finish with a very short movie that I'm playing in honor of Raúl, for whom the missing, that which is missing, and those who are missing have been such a profound part of his life. The hugeness of that which is missing. Call the direction the eye is looking, the line of sight. There, where it grazes the surface of the visibly surging, without reference to a field of human presence, don't look away. I haven't looked away. The neurons spike quickly, and the catastrophe will be consummated even to the end, to the absence of ambiguity, a new range of feeling. Torn awake. What if a man went into his house and leaned his hand against the wall, and the wall was not? Look how your relation to truth creates a tension you have slackened with compromise. Yes, and the more distant it is, the more I have valued it. But to stand where the crossing happens, as fall oaks fold into lake light, and so, wearing reflection, take a further step inside. No, the voice said, you will strike out into a forest of pain, unpathed, wolved, clouds muffling the mountain ridge and spilling down in runnels, at variance with, measuring out an exile between self and self, driven transverse. Nevertheless, you will begin to arrive, to know from intimate impulse the crucial experience of, the threat of dissolution of, but not yet. There is something more than rhythms of distance and presence, of more quality than the set of qualities determining figure and ground and suffering, where respite is so often misinterpreted as a horizon. Isn't the word for a turn of phrase itself a turn of phrase? Something was given to me as a present, and a specter was attached to me pregnant with equivocation. And in the throat of language, and in early June riots of starlings, and in some crumbs in the seam of a book, the solid real steps out from infinitely diluted experience, saying, tongue, I gave you, eyes. At any point in the trajectory, the body might stop. Do you recall this part? But who is it that is speaking in the glorious, unstrung light?
Muy buenas tardes. Es un honor para mí estar con ustedes. Un honor leer con mi querido poeta Forrest. Le agradezco profundamente. Gracias, Ana. Y quiero también dedicar esta lectura a la memoria de un gran poeta, querido amigo, Antonio Cisneros, que falleció hace una semana.
So, good evening. I thank you, and it's an honor to be here with Forrest, to whom I'm deeply grateful. And we'd like to dedicate this reading to Antonio Cisneros, who was a great Peruvian poet and good friend of Raúl's, and he passed away a week ago.
De Purgatorio. Mis amigos creen que estoy muy mala porque quemé mi mejilla.
From Purgatory. My friends think I'm a sick woman because I burnt my cheek.
En el medio del camino. Me llamo Raquel. Estoy en el oficio desde hace varios años. Me encuentro en la mitad de mi vida. Perdí el camino. Ego sum, qui sum.
In the middle of the road. My name is Rachel. I've been in the same business for many years. I'm in the middle of my life. I've lost my way. Ego sum, qui sum.
Domingo en la mañana. 1. Me amanezco. Se ha roto una columna. Soy una santa, digo.
Sunday morning, 1. I awake, a column has broken. I am a sainted woman, I say.
3. Todo maquillado contra los vidrios, me llamé esta iluminada, dime que no, el superestrella de Chile. Me toqué en la penumbra, besé mis piernas, me he aborrecido tanto estos años.
3. All made up face against the glass, I called myself this enlightened woman. Tell me it's not so, the superstar of Chile. I touched myself in the shadows. I kissed my legs. I've hated myself so much these years.
13. Yo soy el confeso, mírame la inmaculada. Yo he tiznado negro a las monjas y los curas, pero ellos me levantan sus sotanas. Debajo sus ropas siguen blancas. Ven, somos las antiguas novias, me dicen.
13. I am the convert. Look at me, the Immaculata. I've sullied the nuns and priests, but they lift their cassocks to show me. Beneath their clothes remain white. Come, we're the ancient brides, they say.
22. Destrocé mi cara tremenda frente al espejo. Te amo, me dije, te amo. Te amo más que nada en el mundo.
22. I smashed my sickening face in the mirror. I love you, I said, I love you. I love you more than anything in the world.
38. Sobre los riscos de la ladera, el sol. Entonces abajo en el valle, la tierra cubierta de flores. Zurita, enamorado amigo, recoge el sol de la fotosíntesis. Zurita ya no será nunca más amigo. Desde las 7 p.m. ha empezado a anochecer. La noche es el manicomio de las plantas.
38. Over the cliffs of the hillside, the sun. Then below in the valley, the earth covered with flowers. Zurita, enamored friend, takes in the sun of photosynthesis. Zurita will now never again be friend. Since 7 p.m., it's been getting dark. Night is the insane asylum of the plants.
63. Hoy soñé que era rey. Me ponía en una piel a manchas blancas y negras. Hoy mujo con mi cabeza a punto de caer, mientras las campanadas fúnebres de la iglesia dicen que va a la venta la leche.
63. Today I dreamed that I was king. They were dressing me in black and white spotted pelts. Today I moo with my head about to fall as the church bell's mournful clanging says that milk goes to market.
Domingo en la mañana, epílogo. Se ha roto una columna. Vi a Dios. Aunque no lo creas, te digo. Sí, hombre, ayer domingo, con los mismos ojos de este vuelo.
Sunday morning, epilogue, 100. A column has broken. I saw God. Even if you don't believe it, I'm telling you, it's true. Yesterday, Sunday, with the same eyes of this flight.
La vida nueva. Entonces, Zurita, tú podrías decirme dónde está mi hijo.
From the new life. So, Zurita, could you tell me, where's my son?
Los ríos arrojados. Fue el amor. Ese fue el amor. Allí ese fue el amor. Allí ese fue el amor que hemos llorado tanto. Se largan los ríos que se aman, arrojándose desde el centro del cielo, lanzándose sobre las cumbres que gritaban mirándose. Nosotros somos los Andes que gritaron mirándose. Dicen los ríos que las llamaban, arrastrándolas, borrascosos, tras el inmenso Pacífico que los vientos subían. Quienes nos subieron el dolor de esas montañas, se van diciendo las largas praderas del cielo. Somos todos los pastos de este mundo. Les contestan partiendo los ríos que se aman, abiertos, tirados, rompiéndose.
The rivers cast down. It was love, that was love. Oh, that was love. Oh, that was the love we've cried so much. The rivers that love one another take off, casting themselves down. From the center of the sky, rushing forth over the cliffs that screamed, seeing themselves. We are the Andes that screamed, seeing themselves. They say the rivers that call them, dragging them off. Blustery across the immense Pacific that the winds brought up. Who brought up the pain of those mountains to us? They say to themselves, long prairies of the sky, we're all the pastures of the world, they answered, dividing the rivers that loved one another, open, throwing, breaking themselves apart.
Los desaparecidos levantan sus caras desde los desiertos, desde las conmovidas piedras, desde la tierra que los miraba, de sur a norte, de este a oeste. Se vieron entonces todos los desiertos del mundo subir, incontables, como las nebulosas, remontando los aires, espejeando los colores del horizonte como plataformas subiendo con el soplo del viento, ondeantes sobre los nuevos aires, resplandeciendo entre sus nombres, entre el torrente de las estrellas, alumbrados, mientras sus voladas arenas se vienen dirigiendo las catedrales que el sueño llamó desierto de Arizona, Atacama, pampas del Sonora, todos arriba, como llevándonos los ojos, mirando levantarse las nebulosas de Notre Dame, de San Pedro, de Nuestra Señora de la Asunción, de todos los desiertos de este mundo, encendidos en las alturas. Son los espejismos que los caídos de la tierra le clavaron al horizonte, decimos nosotros admirándolas. Son los arenales de sus vidas, ascendiendo en el viento. Nos cantan las catedrales de los desiertos, hundiéndose en el cielo, allá, como olas que sucumben contra el océano.
The disappeared lift up their faces from the deserts, from the stones that were moved, from the earth that watched them. From south to north, from east to west. Then all the deserts of the world were seen rise, innumerable like nebula, mounting the airs, mirroring the colors of the horizon like platforms rising with the gusting wind, undulating over the new airs, resplendescing through its names, mirroring the colors of the horizon like platforms rising with the gusting wind. Through the torrents of stars, enlightened, while its soaring sands went on erecting the cathedrals that the dream called the desert of Arizona, Atacama, Pampas of Sonora, all above, as if guiding our eyes from here, watching, lifting themselves up the nebulas of Notre Dame, of Peter, of Our Lady of the Assumption, of all the deserts of this world on fire in the heights. They are the reflections of the earth's fallen. They have been nailed to the horizon. We say we, wondering at them. They are the dunes of their lives, ascending the winds. The cathedrals sing to us of the deserts, plunging themselves in the sea. Over there, like waves that give way against the sea.
El Pacífico es el cielo. Torrentes entonces de la séptima, quinta y novena, cauces de Bach, Beethoven y Amadeus, cursos del cielo, cima y llanuras, estuarios y cascadas de la cuarta, afluentes y sonidos del aire, órganos, cumbres del Milchimahuida, Aysén y océanos. El Pacífico es el cielo, torrente de los hijos del Espolón, Yelcho, lagos y aledaños, el cielo vivo de Chile, espumeando. El Pacífico es el cielo. Cargan entonces los ríos que se aman, abriéndose como abanicos, creciendo hasta reventarse en las olas del océano, que se rompe arriba del horizonte. Son los antiguos ríos, anotan los hombres mirándolos. No, son las mareas del cielo, replican las crestas del Pacífico, álgidas, viniéndose entre las nubes, al frente, recibiendo los miles de ríos que una vez salieron al encuentro de esas playas. Es el océano, repiten entrando en ellas. No, son las playas del horizonte, es la nieve. Somos nosotros subiendo hasta el encontrarnos en el torrente final de todas las almas. Gritan los desollados de Chile, revividos entre las aguas. Es que soy el cielo, vuelve a repetir el Pacífico, vivo, azul, espumeando de amor sobre las montañas.
The Pacific is the sky. So torrents of the 7th, 5th, and 9th, riverbeds of Bach, Beethoven, and Amadeus, rapids of the sky, peaks and pastures, estuaries and waterfalls of the 4th, tributaries and sounds, of air, organs, summits, of Michimahuida, Aysén, and oceans. The Pacific is the sky. Torrents of the sons of Espolón, Yelcho, lake and surroundings. The sky of Chile alive, spuming. The Pacific is the sky, bearing themselves then the rivers that love each other, opening themselves like fans, swelling until they smash down in the waves of the ocean that shatters over the horizon. They are the ancient rivers, note the men looking at them. No, they are the tides of the sky, answer the crests of the Pacific squalls coming on among the clouds. In the foreground, receiving the thousands of rivers that once went to the encounter of those beaches. It is the ocean, they repeat, coming in. No, they are the beaches of the horizon. It is the snow. It is us, rising to find each other in the final torrent of all souls. The flayed of Chile scream revived among the waters. This is because I am the sky, the Pacific repeats again, alive, blue, spuming with love above the mountains. Now we're going to read from Dreams for Kurosawa, and I will read first in English, and then Raúl will finish in Spanish. My name Akira Kurosawa. Like shame that possessed me, I began to dream. The lagoon is yellowish, and beyond the massive salt walls that encircle it, you can see the ocean. The beach is called Punta de Lobos, and the salt mines are nearby. We cross the lagoon in a boat led by a barefooted oarsman, and I hear the clamor of the breakers crashing at least 50 meters away. During the dictatorship, the place became popular because Pinochet turned it into his summer resort, and now it's a surfer's paradise. Neither the mines nor the lagoon exist anymore, and I'd forgotten them completely, but I remembered them again when my grandmother died. The boatman rowed in front of me, and beside us, you could see the salt walls. I'm 5 years old, my sister is 3, and we're with my grandmother. Born in Italy, in Rapallo, she arrived to Chile with my mother still a child. Both were widowed 2 days apart. First my mother, then my grandmother. It was a short summer holiday. In 1986, my grandmother died. I survived a dictatorship, but not the shame. Many years later, when it was my turn, her face came down upon me like a white mountain of salt. I wanted to write it, but the words, like smoldering entrails, arrived dead to my fingers. My name, Akira Kurosawa.
Mi nombre, Akira Kurosawa. Como una vergüenza que yo tenía, empecé a soñar. La laguna es amarillenta y detrás de los paredones de sal se ve el océano. La playa se llama Punta de Lobos y las salinas están al lado. Recorremos la laguna en un bote guiados por un remero descalzo y escucho el estallido de las rompientes a menos de 50 metros. Durante la dictadura, el lugar se hizo conocido porque Pinochet lo transformó en un sitio de veraneo y hoy es el paraíso de los surfistas. Las salinas y la laguna ya no existen y las había olvidado por completo, pero volví a recordarlas cuando mi abuela murió. El botero remaba frente a mí y a los dos lados se veían los paredones de sal. Tengo 5 años, mi hermana 3, y estamos con mi abuela. Había nacido en Italia, en Rapallo, y llegó a Chile con mi madre, aún niña. Ambas quedaron viudas con 2 días de diferencia. Primero mi madre, luego mi abuela. Fue un veraneo corto. Mi abuela murió en 1986. Yo sobreviví a una dictadura, pero no a la vergüenza. Años después, cuando me llegó a mí el turno, su cara se me vino encima como una montaña blanca de sal. Quise escribirlo, pero las palabras, como vísceras humeantes, llegaron muertas a mis dedos. Mi nombre, Akira Kurosawa.
10. Like immense glass pyramids, they hung, becoming transparent as the intensely red countryside that reached the base of the slope had the uncertain consistency of blood or dusk. I realized that I'd fallen asleep while writing the script. That's how I earned a living. And that the image was surely not more than 1 in a million that happened at those almost instantaneous moments of nodding off. The computer screen had gone black, and as I tried to move the mouse to begin working again, I noticed that lately the tremors on my right side had worsened, and that my fingers wouldn't obey me. It snowed. The blinding whiteness stung my eyes, and the cold made me walk awkwardly with very short steps. I remembered having been in that same place during my childhood, and that the snow had blinded me, while other children would call out for me to catch up to them. Suddenly, it surprised me that it snowed for the first time. As I opened my eyes, I saw the transparent mountains, and closer yet, infinite red flowers emerged from the snow as if they were bloody entrails. My fingers ran, letting themselves go on the keyboard. I understood your movies, I managed to cry out. To Kurosawa. I understood your scripts. There's snow. There's a man with Parkinson's that just fell in the snow.
10. Como inmensas pirámides de vidrio, las montañas se tendían transparentándose, mientras el campo intensamente rojo, que llegaba hasta sus faldeos, tenía la consistencia dudosa de la sangre o del atardecer. Me di cuenta de que me había quedado dormido mientras escribía el guión. Me ganaba la vida en eso. Y que la imagen no era seguramente más que una entre las millones que se suceden en esos cabeceos casi instantáneos. La pantalla del computador se había ido a negro y al intentar mover el mouse para reanudar el trabajo, advertí que últimamente los temblores de mi lado derecho habían recrudecido y que los dedos se negaban a obedecerme. Nevaba. La deslumbrante blancura hería mis ojos y el frío hacía que caminara con torpeza, con pasos muy cortos. Recordaba haber estado en mi infancia en ese mismo lugar y que la nieve me había cegado mientras los otros niños me llamaban para que los alcanzara. De pronto me sorprendió que nevara en primavera. Al abrir los ojos, vi las montañas transparentes y más acá, infinidad de flores rojas emergiendo de la nieve como si fueran vísceras sangrantes. Mis dedos corrían deslizándose sobre el teclado. Entendí tus películas. Alcancé todavía a gritarle a Kurosawa. Entendí tus guiones. Hay nieve. Hay un hombre con Parkinson que acaba de caer sobre la nieve.
12. Papa has returned. The mountain summit retreated, vanishing the sky within, and I knew for sure my father would die. I remembered that for some time it hadn't snowed in Santiago, and I told myself I'd already lived enough, that I already was much older than he, and that I was fine. I thanked him for having waited 50 years to come back, because at 52 I could understand him. I picked out his clothes and began to dress him. My shirts were a little big, and as I lifted his head to put on the one that seemed best, I felt the first jolt of tears behind my eyelids, struggling to get out. I told myself again that Father died the 16th of February, 1952, at exactly 31 years of age, and that I must have missed him. But it's not something I would have thought much about. I didn't know exactly when he came back. He moved into my room, and for the last years, we've been able to speak some. Now he had died, and I dressed him while my mother and sister waited in the living room. As I opened the door to tell them they could come in, the fury and the wind and hail thrashed me, stunning me, and blind I ran across the field. "Kurosawa!" I cried out then. He returned to die again with me. As I opened my eyes, above me I saw the dizzying white of the summit, and much further below, the first lights of the city illuminating. Only then could I cry.
2. Papá ha vuelto. La cumbre de la montaña se alejaba perdiéndose cielo adentro, y definitivamente supe que papá iba a morir. Recordé que hacía mucho tiempo que no nevaba sobre Santiago, y me dije que yo ya había vivido lo suficiente, que era ya mucho mayor que él, y que estaba bien. Le agradecí que hubiera vuelto a esperar 50 años, porque yo a los 52 podía entenderlo. Le escogí la ropa y empecé a vestirlo. Mis camisas le quedaban algo grandes, y cuando fui a levantarle la cara para ponerle la que me pareció la mejor, sentí el primer golpe de las lágrimas detrás de mis párpados, pugnando por salir. Me volví a decir que papá murió el 16 de febrero de 1952, a los 31 años exactamente, y que debe haberme hecho falta, pero no es algo en lo que haya pensado mucho. No supe en qué momento regresó. Se instaló en mi pieza, y durante los últimos años alcanzamos a hablar algo. Ahora se había muerto, y yo lo vestía mientras mi madre y mi hermana esperaban en el living. Al abrir la puerta, para avisarles que ya podían entrar. La furia del viento y del granizo me azotó, aturdiéndome, y ciego corrí a campo traviesa. Kurosawa, le grité. Él volvió para morirse de nuevo conmigo. Cuando abrí los ojos, vi encima la blancura radiante de la cumbre y muy abajo las primeras luces de la ciudad encendiéndose. Solo entonces pude llorar.
19. The end has come. The white holes have begun to extend themselves in the horizon, and as I awake, I know that I'd been in the Cordillera. I made coffee and decided to wait. Some time ago, I sold Olivetti typewriters, and it didn't surprise me to come across the sales team again. We were a group of 12, and Deserega assigned territories. He was our boss. The fact that several had already died, including Deserega, didn't surprise me either. I finished my coffee and remembered how he tried to defend me when they threw me out. The room where we met in the mornings was like a classroom with lined-up desks and Deseregas in front. I think I ended up respecting Deserega, also Luis Cerda. When I was late, he covered for me, and he'd hang around so we could head to a bar for coffee. I saw Luis Cerda not long ago. There were dozens of typewriters dumped in his room, some gray Lettera 32s. He said they were leftovers and that it didn't matter because no one uses typewriters anymore. Today is already too late. The repression has been ferocious, and they've thrown the bodies over the sea and mountains. As I got up, I noticed I couldn't move my arms, frozen beneath the snow. Kurosawa, I said. I was just a typewriter salesman, and now I'm dead and it snows.
19. Ha llegado el fin. Los huecos blancos del horizonte han comenzado a crecer, y al despertar supe que ya había estado antes en la cordillera. Me preparé un café y me decidí a esperar. Tiempo atrás vendí máquinas de escribir de la Olivetti y no me sorprendió encontrarme con la cuadrilla de ventas nuevamente. Éramos un grupo de 12 y Deserega repartía los territorios. Era nuestro jefe, el que muchos ya se hubieran muerto, incluido Deserega. Tampoco me llamó la atención. Terminé mi café y recordé que trató de defenderme cuando me echaron. La sala en que nos reuníamos por la mañana era como una sala de clases, con unos escritorios en fila y el de Deserega al frente. Creo que llegué a estimar a Deserega, también a Luis Cerda. El tipo me atrapaba los atrasos y me esperaba para meternos a un boliche a tomar café. Vi a Luis Cerda hace poco. Había decenas de máquinas de escribir arrumbadas en su cuarto, unas letras 32 de color gris. Me dijo que habían sobrado y que no importaba porque ya nadie usaba máquinas de escribir. Hoy ya es tarde. La represión ha sido feroz y arrojaron los cuerpos sobre las montañas y el mar. Al levantarme, observé que no podía mover mis brazos encostrados bajo la nieve. Kurosawa, le dije. Yo era un simple vendedor de máquinas de escribir y ahora estoy muerto y nieva.
For Kurosawa, the sea. Below, the bluffs sliced into the horseshoe bend of the sea, and instead of beach houses built upon cliff terraces, rising arches and columns of an indecipherable antiquity descended step by step down to where the beach begins. Still high, the sun imprinted a solid radiance upon the sea, and when I finally arrived to its edge, the tonal intensity opened up, suddenly flooding my eyes, the breakers steadily rising, becoming more brilliant and luminous. And without a sound, its undertows came and went, covering the sand with infinite lines of color. Then I plunged in and saw that the sea was endless plains of torsos and backs exhumed, of stomachs that waved like rags, extending themselves to the horizon, while further over here, following the curvature of the breakers, the cadavers rose, folding themselves, until appearing for a second, becoming transparent as the peak of the wave to then break apart. They were millions upon millions of faces with their mouths open, infinite hips, arms, and legs, sweeping again and again the beach as if painted ropes. Kurosawa, I managed to cry out. This isn't a dream. This is the sea.
Para Kurosawa, el mar. Los farellones recortaban abajo la herradura del mar. En lugar de las casas playeras edificadas en la terraza de los acantilados, se erguían arcos y columnatas de una antigüedad indescifrable que descendían escalonadamente hasta el comienzo de la playa. El sol todavía alto le imprimía al mar una solidez radiante, y cuando finalmente llegué a su orilla, la intensidad de sus tonos se abrió de golpe, inundándome los ojos. Las rompientes se hacían cada vez más altas, más resplandecientes y luminosas, y sin emitir un sonido, sus resacas iban y venían cubriendo la arena, como infinitos hilos de colores. Hundí entonces mi pie y vi que el mar eran llanuras y llanuras de cuerpos muertos, extensiones interminables de torsos y espaldas exánimes, de vientres que ondeaban igual que paños, extendiéndose hasta el horizonte, mientras más acá, siguiendo la curvatura de las rompientes, los cadáveres ascendían doblándose hasta aparecer por un segundo, transparentados en la cumbre de la ola para luego derrumbarse. Eran millones y millones de caras con las bocas abiertas, infinidades de caderas, de brazos, de piernas barriendo una y otra vez la playa, como si fueran cuerdas de colores. Kurosawa, alcancé a gritarle, este no es un sueño, este es el mar. Gracias.
I don't know which earthquake we just experienced, but we did just, I think, experience a tremor or earthquake. I speak, right? That is not a metaphor. Certain evenings, we are privileged to remember why we're poets, and I think this was one of them. Thank you so much to our guests. There are books outside. There are people among you. Please linger and commune. Thank you.